Hello and welcome to the viewers of this video. This is the Orange Fan here, bringing you another entry for the episode Recap and Thoughts category. This video will be dedicated to episode 44 of Young Justice, Intervention. We begin this episode on the War World on May 30th, where we see Green Beetle has arrived to help Black Beetle put Mongol back into one of these stasis cells. Once Mongol has been taken care of, Black Beetle and Green Beetle go to check on the crystal key, only to see that it was taken during all of the confusion. Black Beetle decides that the next best thing they can do is to guard the key chamber to make sure that whoever has the crystal key now won't be able to use the War World. But because the Justice League already has some of its members guarding the key chamber, and because the Reach Ambassador refuses to confront the heroes directly, the Reach are forced to guard the perimeter of the key chamber instead. We then go to Bloodhaven, where the members of the Young Justice team that were on the War World in the previous episode have returned to the warehouse that's acting as the team's temporary headquarters. And Impulse acknowledges that the crystal key is important, but he insists that freeing Blue Beetle from the Reach's control should be their main objective right now. And Nightwing's response is to turn on the TV, and it's on the news channel, and the news are talking about Blue Beetle. So that seems to be Nightwing's silent way of acknowledging Impulse's point. It's now June 13th, and we're now in Metropolis, where we see Toyman is in a giant robot, and he's trying to rob a bank, but he's quickly and easily stopped by Blue Beetle. When Toyman is taken away by the police, Cad Grant wants to interview Blue Beetle, who agrees to the interview. But from the Reach spacecraft at the United Nations building in New York City, we see that the Reach Ambassador has a remote control, which he's using to control Blue Beetle's movements. And there's a microphone, so whenever the Reach Ambassador talks into the microphone, Blue Beetle says what the Reach Ambassador was saying. So this gives us a better idea of what it means when a Reach Scarab is on mode. And during the interview, we, the audience, see that Impulse and Batgirl are watching Blue Beetle from a distance. The next scene takes us to Atlantis, or one of the cities of Atlantis to be more specific, where Miss Martian has gone to see Lagoon Boy, whose leg has fully healed now, and Lagoon Boy is happy to see that Miss Martian is no longer, that Miss Martian is free from Black Manta's capture, or she's no longer captured by Black Manta. And Miss Martian says that she wanted to bring Lagoon Boy to the surface, and Lagoon Boy says that he was already planning to go to the surface the next day through Zeta Beam technology. But Miss Martian's response is that she thought that the time they could take to get to the surface could be time for them to talk. And Lagoon Boy seems to have a bad feeling about what Miss Martian wants to talk about. The next scene takes us to El Paso, where Blue Beetle is returning home. And we do get to hear Jaime Reyes' thoughts, and we see that Jaime is certainly not happy about the fact that all he can do is helplessly watch as his body is being controlled by someone else. And he says he's not happy about how the Reach Ambassador and the Scarab impersonate him, Jaime Reyes, when he's with his family. But the Scarab responds that this is the only method that they can do that would not put Jaime Reyes' family in danger. But before Blue Beetle can return to the Reyes home, Impulse and Batgirl surprise attack Blue Beetle. And eventually, though, Blue Beetle is able to trap them with the giant staple gun. And because the streets are otherwise empty besides those characters present, the Reach ambassador actually wants to take this chance to eliminate the two heroes. And he tries to sarcastically assure Jaime Reyes that the first kills are always the hardest and that they might as well get it over with. But before Blue Beetle can kill Batgirl or Impulse, a force field appears around Blue Beetle, and we see that Rocket has used her. Rocket's the one who put the force field around Blue Beetle. And then Zatanna casts a spell which magically enhances Rocket's force field. So now there's no way for Blue Beetle to escape. And we find out that Impulse and Batgirl were decoys so that Zatanna and Rocket could trap Blue Beetle. And they're planning to take Blue Beetle somewhere. The next scene takes us to the Atlantic Ocean, and it's now June 14th. And we see that Miss Martian wanted to talk to Lagoon Boy, or the thing that Miss Martian wanted to talk to Lagoon Boy about is she wants to break up with Lagoon Boy. She says that her time captured by Black Manta gave her time to think things over and to reflect upon herself. And she kind of she realizes that she only dated Lagoon Boy because he made her feel better about herself. And she admits that Superboy was right about the fact that Lagoon Boy was her rebound guy. And she says that Lagoon Boy deserves better. And that's what the talk was about. Lagoon Boy is not happy about this, but at the end of the conversation, he does agree with Miss Martian that he deserves better. Or when Miss Martian says that Lagoon Boy deserves better, he shows his agreement, but he's still rather upset about what just happened. So we then cut back to Zatanna, Rocket, Impulse, and Batgirl and the Super Cycle, and we find out that they're all heading to Bialia. More specifically, they're going to the secret cave or cavern that some of the Young Justice team members discovered during the events of the episode Beneath. And while they're in the cave or cavern, they do have to deal with some of the Bialian soldiers, and they also have to confront Mammoth, Shimmer, and Devastation. But because Rocket has to maintain the force field around Blue Beetle, she's unable to fight. So Zatanna, Impulse, and Batgirl are the ones who have to do the fighting. And eventually they arrive to what seems to be an ancient temple. And there are these hieroglyphics and some carvings, and one of the carvings looks like a Blue Beetle scarab, and there's sort of a shrine of sorts, and Rocket places Blue Beetle still in the force field onto the shrine, and Zatanna is preparing something. She admits to Impulse that she doesn't have the power to help Blue Beetle, but she can summon the help of someone who can help Blue Beetle. So Zatanna takes her position in the shrine as well, and she's now in a meditative state or a trance. Yeah, a meditative trance or a meditative state. So Zatanna and Rocket are now unable to help with any other interferences that may happen. And one of those interferences that happen is Green Beetle's arrival. The Reach ambassador has sent Green Beetle to stop the heroes, and that's because when they're on mode, the scarabs can be tracked by the Reach. So that's how Green Beetle was able to find where Blue Beetle is. And we do see, though, that there's more heroes that are around. Beast Boy, Bumblebee, Wonder Girl, and Robin are also, or they reveal their presence soon, and they help the other heroes that can fight. They help them fight Green Beetle, while Zatanna and Rocket have to make their preparations. Eventually, the meditative state is complete. Zatanna finishes her meditative state, and a smaller beetle carving actually leaves the wall, and it places itself on Zatanna's forehead. And then suddenly the spirit of Isis is summoned behind Zatanna. And so the spell that Zatanna and Isis together are going to perform is about to be performed. Rocket is given the okay to let down the force field around Blue Beetle, and Impulse manages to toss Green Beetle onto the shrine as well. And when Zatanna and Isis perform the spell, a blinding light surrounds the shrine, or the temple, and Blue Beetle and Green Beetle are engulfed within this blinding light. And by the time the blinding light is disappeared, the Reach ambassador and the Reach scientist have found out that both the scarabs of both Blue Beetle and Green Beetle are now off mode. And the Reach scientist is chewing out the Reach ambassador for ignoring her warnings. But the Reach ambassador is in no mood for this. He rather, in a very frightening way, he kind of says, the way he says it is, he says, "Say one more word." And he sounds very angry, and the Reach scientist decides not to press the topic any further, to say the least. And after the ritual is complete, the scarab carving that was on Zatanna's forehead crumbles, and Zatanna uses a spell, she casts a spell to see who is in control of the scarabs, and she says that Jaime Reyes and Ba'ar Za'om are now in control of their own bodies again. And Robin checks, he uses the technology that he has, and he confirms that, they can't sense the Reach, the Reach controlling the scarabs anymore. So Blue Beetle and Green Beetle are both freed of the Reach's control. Blue Beetle hugs Zatanna as his show of thanks to her. Blue Beetle hugs Zatanna to thank her for freeing him of the Reach's control. And Green Beetle says that his gratitude knows no bounds because it's been so long since he's been able to have control over himself again. And Blue Beetle's scarab admits that he's happy that Jaime Reyes and him are free of the Reach's control, because the scarab admits that the scarab prefers being partners with Jaime Reyes over being controlled by the Reach. So the heroes are all leaving now. They're leaving the cave or cavern, and they explain to Blue Beetle and Green Beetle about the whole situation. Batgirl found the carvings back in the episode Beneath, and she took pictures of it. And they showed the pictures to Dr. Fate, who was able to translate the hieroglyphics and figured out that it was about a cleansing ritual that put Blue Beetle's scarab off mode over about 4,000 years ago. But because the ritual was with human magic, Dr. Fate could not perform as a Lord of Order, Dr. Fate could not perform the ritual. So he actually trained Zatanna to prepare the ritual. And they also looked into Ted Cord, the previous Blue Beetle's files, where they found out that Dan Garrett was an archaeologist. Dan Garrett was the one who first found the scarab in this cavern or cave, or this ancient temple, and he became the first Blue Beetle. And he also was under the impression that the scarab was a magical artifact. Before he passed away, Dan Garrett gave the scarab to Ted Cord, And Ted Kord actually figured out that the Scarab was really of alien origin, but he became the second Blue Beetle without any superpowers because he didn't want to slap alien technology on his spine and hope for the best. So he locked the Scarab away. But the Light had sent Sportsmaster and Deathstroke to attack Ted Kord to claim the Scarab, and that was the situation that we saw in the flashback from Before the Dawn, the explosion that happened at the Ted Kord Industries facility in El Paso, which is how Jaime Reyes came to cross paths with the Scarab. And they admitted that it took them several months to figure out everything they needed to figure out for the ritual. That's why it took so long. Plus, they also didn't tell Jaime Reyes about it so that the Reach would be unaware of the ancient temple until they were ready to set their plan into motion. But, yeah, this is good now. Blue Beetle and Green Beetle are now free of the Reach's control, so they were able to succeed. Next up, we go to Bloodhaven, where Miss Martian and Lagoon Boy have arrived, and just in time to hear from Nightwing, who just heard from the other heroes that their mission was successful. And Lagoon Boy, though, decides to go watch TV instead because he's still upset about the recent breakup that he and Miss Martian had. And Miss Martian questions Nightwing about where Superboy is, and Nightwing mentions that he went to hang out with Wendy. And Miss Martian is a little disappointed when she hears this. The last scene of the episode takes us to Bialia again, where we see Queen Bee is talking to Devastation, Mammoth, and Shimmer. Queen Bee admits that she recognizes that her minions didn't want to throw the fight with the heroes, but Queen Bee assures her minions that it was necessary so that the Light's plans for several parties can continue on schedule. And that's how we end the episode. So once again, this episode gives us another episode where the heroes manage to secure a victory. In this case, they managed to free Blue Beetle of the Reach's control. And we see Green Beetle is also free of the Reach's control now. So that means besides reclaiming one of the Young Justice team members, or that's right, freeing one of the Young Justice team members, Green Beetle can actually help them as an ally now. And that was great. It was nice to see that they were able to succeed in freeing both Blue Beetle and Green Beetle. And the nice thing about this episode was it did provide a nice history lesson about Blue Beetle, the character, or the various characters who have taken on the mantle of Blue Beetle. Because I admit I wasn't too familiar with Blue Beetle beforehand. I didn't know too much about Blue Beetle before Young Justice. I heard about Blue Beetle here and there, but Young Justice, the TV series, was how I learned a lot more about Blue Beetle, the character. And yeah, it was kind of cool how they went over the history of Blue Beetle and how originally the Scarab was believed to be a magical artifact, but then it was revealed to be alien technology. So I did appreciate the Blue Beetle history lesson that this episode provided us. And I liked how Rocket and Zatanna got to play a big role in this episode, because after they kind of joined the Young Justice team later on in season 1, and then because they became members of the Justice League, they didn't really get to do too much in season 2 beforehand, besides a few scenes here or there. So I did appreciate that Zatanna and Rocket got to have a more prevalent role in this episode. And it was pretty satisfying to see the Reach ambassador lose his composure as things weren't going his way. But I have to admit, his threat to the Reach scientist to say one more word at the end, that was rather terrifying, actually, because usually he comes off as calm and composed. So seeing him lose his temper like that was kind of scary, actually. And otherwise, yeah, I think those are the big topics for this episode, but I did like this episode overall, mostly for the history lesson. So there we go for episode 44 of Young Justice on this channel. Take care, and until next time.